Hi, you're watching New York State Legislative Report with Senator George Maziarz. I'm Julia Lokandi. I'll be your host as your state senator and I discuss what's going on in the New York State Senate. How are you, Senator?
Excellent. How you doing?
Good.
A little change in the set here.
Yeah.
This is good. This is nice.
Starting
More informal.
modernize.
Sitting behind the desk.
So the word of the year seems to be jobs.
Yes.
And I understand that Verizon is looking to build a large data center in Niagara County.
It would be the biggest private sector investment in Niagara County since they built the Niagara Power Project back in the 1950s, late 1950s. It would be up to a $5 billion investment in Niagara County in a data center in the town of Somerset. It would be a huge, huge victory for all of Western New York. And that on top of Yahoo located a data center in Niagara County just last year. We opened it up. So it would be a very big plus for us.
So what is the status of the center?
Well, right now, Verizon has identified his purchased property. It's right on the shore of Lake Ontario. It's immediately adjacent to the AES power generating station. A neighbor did file a lawsuit against the construction of the data center, had some environmental concerns. That lawsuit was heard by Niagara County Court Judge Matt Murphy, and Judge Murphy rendered a decision, a 40-page, very comprehensive decision, stating that everything was done correctly, that there were no environmental process impediments to the project going forward. Now the individuals have 30 days with which to appeal that decision by Judge Murphy. So Verizon, I met with them last week here in Albany. They are going to wait out that 30-day period to see if an appeal does happen. They've indicated they are looking at other sites. We should be very cognizant of the fact that they're looking at a site in Wisconsin. But they indicated to me, and they said that I could publicly state that Niagara County is their preferred site. It has everything, all their requirements going into this process. They needed rail access. They have rail access. They needed fresh water. Well, they've got Lake Ontario right next door. Lake Ontario doesn't freeze. It's a very deep lake. And they would use water in their cooling process. And they needed to be located in a remote area. And those three criteria are all met by that location.
Great. Tell us about a grant that the Verizon Wireless Foundation gave. It's to help teach elementary school kids about
Verizon Wireless, their foundation, gave, sort of coincidentally, to the Niagara County Farm Bureau recently a grant for $9,800, I believe it was. And what Verizon is attempting to connect with the New York State Farm Bureau in teaching young children about farming, about the agricultural business in the state of New York. I think young children and maybe even a lot of adults think that food comes from Wegmans or Tops. They don't realize that Tops or Wegmans have to get that food from somewhere. It looks great on the supermarket shelves and the cases and so forth, but it's a farmer that had to grow that. And we did the presentation at the Benkel Farm in Niagara County just this week. An extremely cold day, as you can see. Yes. I look like I'm shivering. That's Maureen Rasp-Gloss from Verizon and Paul Benkel. And in the background there are the grape harvesting area. And people think, well, there are no grapes growing now. But actually, you can't see them in that picture. But just behind us, there were probably 10 or 15 individuals working, pruning the vines for their spring harvest already. So farming is a 365-day-a-year operation. Yeah. There we were in the barn, which was much warmer, by the way, for the actual check presentation. But this is going to assist the Farm Bureau in purchasing equipment to take it particularly into elementary schools, to show kids, how rewarding, difficult but rewarding a career in farming can be.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yes, very good.
Yeah. The first order of business this legislative session was an aggressive plan to create jobs and save taxpayers money. Tell us about it.
Yes, well, this week in the Senate, under the new majority, we passed legislation which would cap state spending. It would cap the increases in taxes. It goes along with Governor Cuomo's plan, eventually, hopefully, to get the Assembly to go along with capping property taxes in the state of New York. This particular plan that we passed would give businesses an incentive to create jobs. It would give them a tax break, if you will, for every job that they created here in New York. I believe it was sponsored by Senator Zeldin from Long Island, a newly elected senator. It's exactly what we have to do. This session has to be the Senate partnering with Governor Cuomo to create jobs, to make New York, as the governor stated in his State of the State message, a more business-friendly atmosphere and business-friendly place. We're not that now. We haven't been that for a long time, and the results have shown it. We have high unemployment, fleeting population, if you will. This year we're going to, I think we were one of the few states that lost 2 congressional seats. We lost 2 in the last census round. I mean, it's all because people are leaving New York, and they're leaving New York because there are no jobs. We have a great education system here, but, you know, kids go to college, great university system, and they leave here for the jobs that we don't have. Right. So we're going to change that. We're going to turn that around. And this legislation that we passed this week, when it comes to property taxes, when it comes to incentivizing businesses, this is the direction we have to go.
And in addition to putting people back to work, you also want to make sure that the state doesn't spend any more than it can afford. So there was a constitutional amendment that was passed too.
Right, exactly. That would not allow state spending to increase more than the revenues that we have coming in. So, you know, these are all areas that the Senate has looked at in the past, areas that we've passed in the previously. The Assembly's rejected them all. I think the advantage that we have now is a favorable ear of the governor. I think Governor Cuomo has at least stated publicly, he stated during the course of his campaign, that he was on board with this program. And I think the real challenge for him is going to be to get the Assembly to agree with us.
You are the chairman of the Senate Energy and Telecommunications Committee,
yes,
as you have been.
Yes.
What are your biggest priorities in the upcoming year?
Well, the first priority, and it was sort of surprising, pleasantly surprising, I might add, that the governor has already submitted legislation to extend and almost permanentize what's called the Power for Jobs program. Now, the Power for Jobs program is a program that assists over 500, mostly small businesses in New York State currently. It provides them with reduced power supplied by the New York State Power Authority. Almost all of the incentives to do that, or all the power to do that, or the revenue to pay for that program comes from the Niagara and St. Lawrence power projects. The problem has been, over the last several years, this program has gone from year to year. It's been extended for only a 1-year period. Well, no business person in their right mind is going to make a substantial investment in their business, is going to, put money into their business to create more jobs, to stay here in New York, knowing that they've only got this incentive for a 1-year period. Mm-hmm. This legislation that we passed last year in the Senate, the Assembly rejected it, would have extended this program for a 7-year period. It would have given further incentives for the business. It would have given them what they really need is certainty that this business is that this incentive is going to be there for a longer period of time than 1 year. Again, Governor Cuomo sent over one of the first bills that he sent over, and the governor, for our listeners' information, can send over what we call program bills. The governor sends them over to the legislature. The legislature decides whether or not they want to put them before the House, assign them to a committee. The first bill that the governor sent over, the first program bill he sent over, was an extension of the Power for Jobs program. The bill was, what did the governor tell me, remarkably familiar to the bill that we passed last year, which is a great sign for us because it means that the governor is on board with at least with the Senate in getting this bill to go forward. Now, to his credit, Governor Patterson was too. He did not have what would you call the political will, I guess, or the political fortunes to be able to push this in the Senate. I think Governor Cuomo is different. I think he's got it, and I think he's going to use it. So when you come to what the priorities are of the Energy Committee, number one is to get this program extended for a long period of time so that small businesses, medium-sized businesses can create jobs, can invest in New York. That's our number one priority on the Senate Energy Committee. The other area that we want to look at is a better use of hydropower, particularly from the Niagara and St. Lawrence projects, doing more for upstate New York, looking into some of the policies and procedures that they have at the New York Power Authority. That's going to be a very critical role. Certainly, Article 10, siting of generation plants in the state of New York. We haven't built a new generation plant in New York in a long time, and we have to have a plan, a permitting process for generators, for people that want to invest in New York, a process for them to be able to do that.
The UB 2020 plan, I know that's
Yes.
very important to you. It's very important to Western New York. What's the deal with that right now?
UB 2020, again, I'll just explain a little bit for some of your listeners who may not be familiar with it. It was a plan that was developed probably over a 5-year period by the University of Buffalo to give the University of Buffalo a certain degree of freedom, if you will, a certain exemptions, deviations from the State University of New York Central Administration in Albany. It would allow them, under certain circumstances, to set their own tuition, which is, a very difficult thing to do when you have this statewide public university system. But UB invested a lot of money, a lot of time and effort under the direction of Dr. John Simpson, who was a true visionary for Western New York. And this plan, which is supported by all of my colleagues, bipartisan, Senator Tim Kennedy, Senator Mark Rosani, Senator Mike Ransenhofer, and Senator Pat Gallivan in Western New York, passed the Senate last year, was vehemently debated in Albany. There were a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that don't particularly like this. There were some people who said, well, what's good for UB should be good for the other SUNY centers at Stony Brook, Binghamton, Albany. And we're not opposed to that. I mean, plagiarism is the sincerest form of flattery, and if they want to copy something that makes UB better, to make their institutions better, that's fine. But we've got to get it done. And last year, it stalled in the Assembly, despite the Herculean effort put on by Assemblyman Mark Schroeder to get it through the Assembly. Speaker Silver. It was the one thing I think that probably held the budget up for an extra 30 days last year.
That's right.
But I can tell you that we are committed to it as a delegation in Western New York, and it would be just unconscionable for the legislature not to pass UB 2020. I mean, I realize it goes against the grain. It's not the norm, but the Western New York economy has suffered for so long. I mean, and this is one thing that could really turn it around. And again, to his credit, the governor has come on board with it during the course of the campaign. He said he supported it. We met with him last week, and this is the one issue. He met with all the Republican senators. The one issue he talked about was UB 2020, how much he favored it. He realizes it's going to be a very difficult sell in the Assembly.
Yeah, and it kind of fits in with the whole theme of the year, really, with creating jobs, keeping people in New York.
It would create this whole health corridor in Buffalo, would bring UB more into a research institute than what it already is. And I know that there's opposition to it out there. There's opposition from some of the public employee unions, but on balance, I think it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for Western New York.
Yeah, return on educational investment.
Absolutely.
I know we will be talking about this in the future.
We could do 10 shows on that.
Yeah. Thanks so much for being with us,
Welcome.
Senator.
Thank you.
For any additional information, Maziarz at maziarz.nysenate.gov.